Sprouted beans offer many nutritional benefits that can help us elevate our internal system and our internal being. And these particular set of beans you're looking at here, they are green lentils. And I find out of all the lentil varieties, these are the tastiest when you sprout them. They also have a very clean finish, as in you don't have as much of that outer layer that you have to deal with. And what I want to show here is what a sprouting process looks like when you're in the middle of it. So sprouting is very straightforward. You soak the beans in water, and in this case I use reusable sealable bags, and then I've reused a container that once contained the salad that you can buy out of Walmart or Kroger's, right? And so I just reuse that large container to hold the packets of beans. So I have the beans soak in water in these resealable bags, and you let it soak for about 8 hours. You can actually do this early in the morning, go to work, and when you get off in the evening, you can then drain the water out of the bags and then leave them in a dark place or a dark corner so that they have time to germinate. And then one of the expert techniques that I've used is that I will drain the water and then I will put new water in, slosh the beans around to get out the excess material that came off of the beans, drain that, and then leave a little bit of water inside, right? So I'm not really re-soaking them so much as I'm adding a little bit more water so that the germination process has a little more oomph to it. Spring water has been the absolute best water I found for this process. Spring water. Nothing works better than spring water. The length of the tails that you see here tells the tale, right? I don't get that type of length with distilled water or purified water or any other type of water. I would never dare use tap water. But spring water does the best and produces the best results in how the beans respond to the water. And so I use 3 waves of water, right? So the initial soaking for 8 hours, and then I might leave the beans in just a little bit of water, not as much as you use for soaking, right? When you soak the beans, you want to use enough water that covers all the beans, right? But then if you put a new application of water, you just want a little bit of water, just enough to keep the moisture process going. And if you have nice warmth indoors, then that's going to cause the beans to pull in that water a little bit. What you're doing is you're creating that natural pressure, that natural tension, just like in nature. And so the beans respond to that pressure, to that natural situation of having just enough water, but not so much water that it overindulges and doesn't grow properly. And so using that observation from nature, I found that I can cause the beans to sprout more powerfully, right? This bag here, it wasn't filled with what I felt like was a lot of lentils, but when they sprouted, they went from occupying just a small little portion of the bag at the bottom to almost covering well over half of the bag. And I do rotate the beans, right, on day number 2 and day number 3 and day number 4. So I do this over multiple days, right? It only takes like, 20 seconds to maintain this sprouting process each day. It takes about 20 seconds per bag. I just lift the bag up and I start moving the beans around, and I put the bag right back down. I might pour in just a little bit of water, just a little bit, to cause the beans to compete with each other. It's like a competition for the water. And that competition causes the beans on the top to try to compete with the beans on the bottom, and the beans on the bottom to compete with the beans on top. And so you end up with this dynamic natural process. And you see me shake the bag there. That's basically what I do a lot of times, is I'm just jostling the beans around to create movement, to create diversity within the bag itself. And that diversity and that movement and that transformation allows the sprouting process to take place in a much richer and much more dynamic way. So I absolutely love this, because the end result, when I taste the beans, when I eat the beans are actually not as bitter as they would be if I just did sprouting by the book. But when I add a personal touch to this, and I use my own intuition into the growth process from nature, the beans actually come out a whole lot better. And what it taught me and what it teaches me is that the environment and the way things are approached matters a great deal. And so these beans here, I've selected them, right, because it only takes a small handful of these early in the day, where you can store them in a Ziploc bag. I like to use the term Ziploc, a reusable sealable bag, and you can consume them in one go. And just like Sadhguru says, and I've tested this out myself, you can literally go the entire day on just these beans. I don't do that, but I do use them for cellular cleansing of my own body, and I use them to give my body an initial boost and an initial instruction. That initial instruction is that here is nature in its most simple and profound form, and learn from the properties and inherent personality of these beans and their recent growth, emergence, and transformation cycle to inform you, gut microbiota, gut microbiome, on how you can continue in your growth process.
Harmony, beauty, peace, love, goodness, order, elevation, holiness, calm, conciliation, regeneration, rejuvenation, renewal, transformation, ascension, family, congregation, forgiveness, love, joy, beauty, peace.
And so you can speak to the waters, speak to liquids, and when you leave that spoken liquid still for a night, the next day you can use those liquids. This here is tea, but you can do this to spring water. Tune it, add reverberation to it, add frequency and vibration to the waters, to the liquid.
Permeate the waters.
And I found that the beans respond extremely well to this process. Everything I said before this, you can exclude this part, the way I handled the beans and everything. But when I add this approach, it heightens things even more. Because to the extent there is consciousness connected with these essential elements, these beans, they become
Structure the water.
more imbued with these properties. 432 hertz, the frequency of peace. And this is 528 hertz, a frequency that repairs DNA and enhances cellular function. And so that property can be imbued into the water in addition to your affirmations. And then if you pour that water onto the beans, they take on those attributes. When you apply this to tea and other noble liquids, they also pick up those properties, and it helps with the renewal and recycling of your being. And you don't have to use just one of these frequencies. You can use them together.
Polarity.
And the great thing about this process is it applies to all things in the universe, including plastic. So,
Does not matter the material. The harmonies will pervade.
and these frequencies can pervade the plastics themselves.
Even the plastic itself will be structured. And all the elements within will be elevated to create better growth and greater vitality.
And so we raise up the harmonies inherent in the beings themselves.